The small town of Albaville in province of Como was left in a shock after severe hailstorm hit the area on a Monday evening, covering streets, cars and roofs with ice balls the size of walnuts in some areas tennis ball. The storm, which lasted less in half an hour, caused significant damage but struck locals with a sudden ferocity. Residents describe it chaotic stints and roads turned wild in a matter of minutes, forcing cars to stop. It was like an attack, where the hail was so strong that it broke roofs, totaled and damaged cars in seconds, said Maria Conti, a shop owner in the city center. Several houses had broken windows and emergency service received dozens of calls for help. Firefighters worked throughout the night and cleared fallen branches to secure damaged roofs, with the local farmers reported significant crops losers, especially in vineyards and orange, were weeks away from the harvest. Agriculture Association estimated the damage of hundreds of thousands of euros. Videos posted online showed the streets Albaville resembling frozen river, with the drain overflowing with a sudden rush in water and ice. Public transport with the disruption throughout the province of Como, and temporarily enclosures were put up in place to prevent accidents. Meteorologists explained the phenomenon as a result in a sharp rise in hot, humid air against the cold front moving from the northern Italy, and the collisions that can cause severe thunderstorm and hail. Experts also noted that climate change is increasing both with the frequency and severity of such events throughout the region. Local authority urged residents to check instability in their roofs and vehicles, and the major promised rapid assistance to those affected. Albaville was faced many storms, but this was one of the worst in recent years. We support our community in the recovery, he said. For the many residents of the province of Como, this storm was stark reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the growing challenge is adapting to weather conditions. The Italian island of Ischia near Naples have been devastated by powerful flood and landslides triggered by relentless rainfall. Torrents of water swept through the town, tearing apart flood, burying homes smooth and leaving residents in shock at the state of destruction. In the town of Casamicciola Terme, one of the hardest hit era, houses were engulfed by the cascading mud and debris. It was like avalanches of water and earth cascading down, said Rosa Espone, a resident who narrowly escaped with her family. In a seconds, everything were only gazed down. Authority confirmed multiple deaths, with the several people still missing as such, and the rescue operations continue. Dozens of residents were injured, while hundreds and evacuation from the unsteppable buildings. Schools, shops and businesses remain closed as emergency crews cleared blocked streets. Emergency snow cars overturned and half buried, with the rescue workers and volunteers dig through the layers of mud with their hands to reach service. Power outage and damaged water supplies have left many communities isolated. The island's still terrain combined with the days of heavy rain triggered a series of landslides that shut down mountains into the coastal town. Experts noted that devastation and uncontrolled construction have worsened island's vulnerability to such disaster. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni experienced condolences to victim families and pledged immediate aid, calling the disaster a national tragedy. Italian Civil Protection Agency has deployed helicopters, driver and special units to assist rescue efforts, with the local authority declared a state of emergency. The flood has also remained wider concern. Each popular tourist destination known for the hot spring and bridge is now facing questions about building safety and climate resilience.
Holy sh**!
Meanwhile, firefighters from all over Italy were sent to reinforce refuse force. Social media is flooded with the images in dramatic rescue operations. Children begin lifted from rooftops, elderly people begin to carry out throughout the waist deep water, and pain being saved from the daunting. The hashtag Sicilia Scotta Aqua were become popular throughout the country. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed solidarity with the region, promised no community will be left without the help. We will rebuild our support every affected family. Experts warn that the Mediterranean region is becoming increasingly vulnerable to such storm. In the recent report by European Environmental Agency, Sicily was identified as a climate hotspot facing rising sea levels, heat waves, and now extreme rainfall. As the sky begins to clear, attention turned to recover. Damage assessment, no ongoing to questions are being raised about the urban planning drainage system and early warning protocols. But for many Sicilians, healing will take no longer. As Giulia Romanga, whose home was destroyed, it said with the tears here years. We survived but not lost everything. Now we have started all over again.
Mai visto una roba del genere, guarda! Madre de Dios. Su, que desastre. Mira. Ahora mismo en Garachico.
Local authority urged residents to stay at home and avoid travel to roads and rail, more driving conditions dangerous. Emergency services were also called to help with the deal in the aftermath of the storm, including clearing roads and ASFDs affected. The hail comes as Italy, like much of Europe, experienced unseasonably cold weather. Forecasts predict that the extreme weather could continue for several days, with some storms of heavy rain expected across the country. Although Rome is no stranger to extreme weather events, the sudden intensity and hailstorm cut off guard as residents begin the process to cleaning up and repairing the damage caused by the storm. They will adaptedly by keeping their close eye on weather forecast in the coming days. The storm, which has intensified in Mediterranean Sea over the past few hours, has taken a character as a full-fledged cyclone. Winds around the region and sometimes exceeded gusts of 100 km/h at the sea was rule. In the coming days, severe storm will wake up to 5 to 6 meters high and peaks up to 8 meters are expected in the low Mediterranean Sea between the southwestern provinces of Campania, especially Cilento and Calabria, as well over most of Sicily and the Ionian Sea and the entire Adriatic. Tomorrow they shift the low-pressure system towards the Adriatic with a mainly effect to eastern basins. So let's take a look at the details. The human toll of storm is still being acid. At least 3 deaths have been confirmed so far, including the elderly man who drowned in flooding basement in Messina and young delivery driver who was swept away by flood waters in Catania. Dozens of people have been injured, many of them due to falling debris in traffic incidents on the road, Middleside, Pillary or rain. Sicilian Governor Renata Citrelli visited the flooded areas on Tuesday, calling that the managed helicopters and promised long-term support. We will not abandon our people. The recovery will be swift and complete, we promised during the press conference. Local volunteers arrived the affected areas, diverted flood and helping to clear debris. Social media is now filled not only image and destructive but also of solidarity. Neighbors stretch offering shoulders and young groups organized donated drivers. School in several provinces remain closed to damage assessment continue. Psychologists have been sent to provide assistance to children and families affected by trauma, especially in the hardest hit community of Gela and Lixita. Sicily, Italy's largest island, has been hit one of the strongest storms in the recent times. One of the night of June 27, several weather warnings brought more than 180 mm of rainfall in just 20 hours, more than the region usually received in entire month. This was hit area where Palermo, Catania, Anginda and Messina were the hardest hit. Authorities confirmed that at least 3 people died as a result of the flooding electrocutions. Among the victims was a 45-year-old man from the town of Biancivaga, who was trapped in this car where sudden flooding inundated in low light and presented. In Palermo, emergency service responded more than 14 calls in one night. More than 120 homes were reportedly flooded in historic districts of Calza and Balero. In the town of Agern and Mount Etna, landslides to the evacuation more than 17 residents, while the rescue volunteers injured several persons. Power outage affected nearly 30,000 homes. An emergency company, Aeneas, sent dozens of repair crews on the island. Rain severe between Catania and Syracuse was suspended, and yet Falcon Belen Airport. 15 flights were delayed or diverted due to heavy rain, and the wind gusts exceeded 19 km/h.
Le macchine se ne sono andate, sono volate.
Offering to lifeline in these terrifying times, agriculture sector and the backbone of Sicily economy is not immune to the storm impact. Orange in the field and inundated posing to threat to groups of livelihood. Farmers already facing challenges in recent years are now too late to continue with the aftermath of this natural disaster. As the storm intensifies, rescue operations are underway to ensure the safety of residents trapped in the rising water. Emergency service blocked by the local volunteers to navigate in treacherous conditions to reach those in need. Evacuations are being carried out systemically, proportions to most vulnerable members of the community. Italy's government, in collaboration with the regional authority, is mobilizing rescue to address the crisis. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has declared a state of emergency in Sicily, unlocking additional funds to rescue and in recovery efforts. The Italian Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations are also coordinated relief operations to provide essential supplies and support the affected communities. While the storm continues to batter Sicily, the resilience and solidarity in the people shine through. Neighbors are leading to helping hand, and the communities are coming together to face and change in person to natural disaster. The Italian capital Rome has been stunned after a sudden and violent hailstorm swept through the city, pelting streets, monuments, and neighborhoods with the eyes of the sky of Albaville. The storm struck with a little warning, during summer strikes into a dramatic clash of thunder and lightning before unleashing torrents. The rain mixed with hail. When the minutes rolled, turned it wild, resembling winter snow rather than a September evening. I felt like the sky was exploding, said Marco Bianchi, a taxi driver whose car window was shattered. I lived here all life and never seen Rome like this. Dozens of people were threatened to injure, many from flying glass and fallen debris. Hospital reported cases to shock and debris and brushes, where several children were taken with a hit injury caused by the hailstorm. Emergency service received across the city responded to collapsing shops, canopies, damaged vehicles, and flooded underpasses. Tourists were cut off guard in a historic era, with doors around the shelter inside the Colosseum and St. Peter Basilica and hailstorm battered Conti and pieces. Social media quickly filmed with the several images of the Trevi fountain surrounded by the sky, with the local described into steam from another world. Transport was now into disarray. Rome's metro facing delay after water seeped into tunnels, with the traffic jams scattered into kilometers and the driver abandoned damaged car. Agriculture outside the city was also hit. The vineyard in Lazio suffered civil damage and the entire cruise destroyed just a week before harvest. harvest, raising fears of million losers to the local farmers. Meteorologists explained the storm was fueling the unusually warm Mediterranean air classes the colder north front, creating the perfect conditions to the cave formations. Experts warning that climate change is making such extreme events more frequent even in the region accustomed to them. This is not the first time Sicily was faced with the wrath of nature, but experts are calling this storm one of the most destructive weather events in decades. The last such disaster occurred in 2029, where deadly floods and landslides killed 37 people in Messina, but this time the combination of heavy rainfall, wind and widespread infrastructure damage made the consequences even more serious. According to preliminary government report, more than 1,200 homes were damaged, 14 roads remain closed and 7 bridges have been structure damage. Insurance companies are already inundated with the claims of many families without insurance to continue on compensation from the state. This storm was particularly dangerous because it suddens. Meteorologists issue a yellow alert just hours before the first downpour. By that time, it was too late many communities to prepare. Critics are now calling to fast weather warning system to better preparedness of natural disaster, especially in the southern region, which is often overlooking. Satellite images show in a grim picture. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern regions of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, boost their banks and inundate towns and villages. This latest episode of flooding has left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po the Albaville, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency services to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and isolated communities. In Venice, the city is too familiar to high water levels. Flood definitions will put the test. The iconic Moss barriers, designed to protect the city with the rising tides, were activated shelters to mitigate the Venice from the significant damage. However, other areas in the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to fare the higher ground.
Guardate come piove, come nevica a Pasqua.
Experts warn that such events are becoming more frequent due to climate change, especially in the southern Europe. Palermo Major Robert Lalacalla called the government assistant say this is no longer a seasonal storm. This is a climate emergency. We need to urgent investment in infrastructure and prevention. No casualties have been confirmed, but dozens of people have been received medical attention and injured in the shock. The Italian government has promised to assess the damage and provide funds to clean up in the coming days. Sicily is beginning in lightly clean up. The storm is stark reminder of increasing unpredictability of nature in the face of global warming. In Messina, landslides blocked major highways, isolated several mountains villages. Farmers in Surrey reported several damaged crops with the olive groves and a vineyard underwater. One of the local farmers, Antonio Bellini, said, "We have lost half of our harvest. We haven't seen rain like this in 40 years." Temporary shelters were set up in community center and church for families who were forced to leave their homes. Volunteers are working around the clock to distribute food, blankets of our necessities. In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself those in unprecedented storm its nature unleashed any fury upon the picturesque Italian island. We burst the exclusive coverage and mythological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering hilding the tempest to apparent apparitions. Coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains leading the widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. Our on the ground reported paint a vivid picture to havoc wreaked by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to floodedness. The historic architecture with it stood the test time to the faces of relentless onslaught of the wind of rain. Throughout the island communities are grappling with the power outage and the storm force causes significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm. The Sicilian city of Palermo is trying to recover after the violent storm that caused chaos throughout the region, bringing record rainfall, destructive winds and widespread flooding. In a matter of hours, almost a month of worst of rainfall caused weather overflow and the streets flood. Footage from the city shows cars floating like toys, buses stuck in the middle on the roads and fire-ridden residents seek refuge in the rooftop. The water rose so quickly that we barely had time to escape, said Giovanni Russo, whose family was rescued to firefighters from their flooded apartment. At least 5 people were killed and dozens were injured. More than 200 residents were evacuated from their homes and thousands were left without power due to damage in power lines caused by fallen trees and lightning strikes. The historic center of Palermo, known for the architecture and the live market, was illy emptied, businesses closed to tourists at the day hotels. Hospitals are overwhelmed, treating cases to hypothermia, injuries and shock. Emergency shelters have been set up in school and community halls to accommodate families who have lost their homes. The major called in a worst storm in history, and the request urged assistance to the native level. In addition to Palermo rural area, the Sicily were also affected. Vineyard, olive farms and a citrus orange which are vital to the island economy were destroyed, rising concerns about the significant loser and agriculture. Transport link was paralyzed. Palermo airport suspended flights to several hours, and a ferry rail service were suspended due to flooding and landslides. Meteorologists said the storm was intensified by the collisions of warm Mediterranean waters with a cold front, increasingly common phenomenon linking to climate change. Italian Civil Protection Agency warning that Sicily is now one of the regions in Europe most vulnerable to extreme weather conditions.
Chiudi.
Public transportation was severely disrupted, leaving passengers stranded. The coastal area faced to boost with a storm and strong sway, crashing against the coastline, causing erosions to damage the sea definitions. Emergency services are working around the clock to help those in need. The Italian Red Cross has mobilized teams to support the most affected areas, offering shelters and distributing basic necessities. Refuse operations are ongoing, with the reports of people trapped in their homes due to rising water. Helicopters have been deployed to evacuate those to imminent danger. The impact of the storm on agriculture is also a growing concern. Sicily knows the serious growth of vineyard forces potential devastation. Initial estimates suggest significant crop losses with a could have the long-term economic impact of the region farming communities. Italian Prime Minister Conti has experienced solidarity with the affected residents, pledging government aid to resources to support recovery efforts. He praised the resilience of the Sicilian people and terrorist forced rescues. Meteorologists predict severe weather conditions will continue Italy over the next 24 hours and advise residents to remain vigilant. As Sicily struggles with the aftermath and the disaster of focus to ensure the safety of the residents is beginning to arduous task to rebuilding. The full extent of the damage will become clear in the coming days, but for now Sicily is widespread the storm relentless onslaught. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in the several regions, mobilized rescue workers and deployed to army to aid the evacuation force. Civil Protection Authority have urged people in the affected areas to remain cautious to need official warning to forecast in coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited the affected areas and presented their solidarity with the victims and pledged government support to reconstruction efforts. This is a national emergency and we are working closely with the local authorities to ensure the safety of all residents, she said. Climate experts warn that such extreme weather events become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, is particularly vulnerable in the affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, property, maintained infrastructure, and urban explosion into flood-prone areas in exact button the impact of the recent storms. A powerful storm hit Sicily, plunging part of the Italian island into chaos as torrential rain, strong winds and flash floods swept through the gray skies, including Palermo, Catania and Messina. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm dumped more than 120 mm of rain in just a few hours, nearly a month's worth, flooding streets, collapsing roads and prompting dozens of evacuations. Emergency service responded more than 300 calls using helicopters to board the rescue trapped residents. In Palermo, dramatic footage showed cars flooding like toys and shops in the historic center of flooding. Giulia Romana, a 42-year-old local resident, said, "It was terrible. The water rushed into our house in a matter of minutes. The barrier had time to move the upper floor. Schools were closing in affected regions, and hundreds of people were left without power due to power outage." Authority also reported temporarily closed to Catania airport. The rail runway were flooded, caused delays and cancellations. Meteorologists explained the extreme weather conditions as a mitigant to rare Mediterranean hurricane formed by high sea temperature and unstable air masses. In Venice, a city all too familiar, and the high water level flood definitions were put on the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the crisis from the rising test were activated, sheltered the Venice from significant damage. However, other areas of the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in the Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to higher ground. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in several regions, mobilizing rescue workers to deploy to army to assist in evacuation efforts. Civil Protection Authority have urged people to affected areas to remain cautious to official warning as more rain forecast in the coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in the affected areas, expressing her solidarity with the victims and pledging government support to reconstruction efforts. This is national emergency and we are working closely to local authority to ensure the safety for all residents, she said. Climate experts that such extreme weather events could become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, particularly vulnerable to affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, poorly mountain infrastructure and urban explosion into flood-prone areas has exacerbated the impact of recent storms. The Italian city of Palermo was left in shock after the severe storm swept through the Sicilian capital, bringing torrential rain, hurricane-force winds and flash floods that paralyzed the city. Within hours, streets turned into raging rivers, swept away across the trapped residents in their homes. Emergency services were inundated with the call, rescued dozens of people from flooded cars in the basement. It was like a waterfall rushing throughout the streets, said a local shopkeeper. Describe it now if the store was destroyed in minutes. Hospitals reported an influx of patients suffering from the injured and hypothermia. Authorities confirmed several casualties and thousands of people were left without power as the power lines collapsed under the weight of fallen trees. The city's historic districts, usually bustling with the tourists, were usually empty as residents hid in their homes. The storm also disrupted vital infrastructure. Palermo Airport temporarily suspended flights and ferry service were halted due to wave crashed onto the coast. In the rural area around the city, farmland was destroyed, onto olive groves and vineyards were flooded, raising fears of significant losses to agriculture. Meteorology said the storm was intensified by the warm water of the Mediterranean Sea, which follow unstable air masses. Conditions like to the border effects of the climate change. Italy's civil protection agency warned that extreme weather conditions are becoming the new normal, and they call it to mandate investment to flood protection and the early warning system. Local authorities declared a state of emergency, and the government promising to allocate funds to deal with the aftermath of the national disaster. Volunteers joined to brigade the police to clear blocked roads, but recovery expected to take weeks to even months. Sicily, normally bridge collapsed loose the dew blow from the narrow fields, and wild green groups are now fast to swell through the mud and the water. Environmental warning: in addition to human casualties, entire ecosystems have been temporarily destroyed. In the city of Noto, residents placed candles and the steps of historic cathedral in memory of the victims. Local priests held open-air masses in a flooded courtyard, calling the strength and the unity. One of the sailors, Lucia Manso, said, "We lost our beginnings, but not each other. The most important things." Meanwhile, the Italian army remained the standby with more than 400 soldiers destroyed across the islet to clear debris, reinforce river banks to deliver aid to remove vigilantes. The EU has also experienced its support. A team from the US Civil Protection Mechanism has been sent to coordinate with the Italian authority, increasing the livelihood of international funding to support long-term recovery. Scientists emphasize this is only a high bridge of may become normal. Southern Europe is especially by the Mediterranean basin is becoming increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather events that the climate change accelerates.